The alien queen mocked human warriors, until she saw one fight in Battle Sol HFY. The alien queen, ruler of a faraway civilization, was approaching. Her fleet was massive, unlike anything seen in human records. Ships of strange shapes glimmered in the sunlight, and each one seemed alive, almost like extensions of her own mind. The queen herself was a figure of awe. Standing taller than the tallest human, with skin that shimmered like molten silver and eyes that seemed to hold galaxies, she exuded confidence. Her movements were graceful but sharp, every motion calculated. From her observation deck, she watched Earth with curiosity tinged with scorn. She had encountered many civilizations across the stars, and in her experience, humans were weak. Small, fragile, and unorganized, they seemed incapable of mounting any real resistance. She had come not as a conqueror, but as a superior force, confident that her arrival would be a mere formality. On Earth, the first signs of her presence caused immediate panic among military forces. Radar systems picked up massive objects moving in formation above the planet. Civilian satellites captured footage of strange, iridescent ships that moved with speed and precision unlike anything humans had built. The news spread quickly. Governments held emergency meetings, scientists and military experts debated their options, and ordinary people watched from windows and screens, unsure whether to flee or stay. Despite the alarm, the alien queen observed quietly, confident that the humans' fear was already proof of their weakness. Her arrogance was palpable. From her vantage point, she could see human cities, highways, and military bases. They seemed like fragile toys, scattered without any real structure. She chuckled softly, her voice echoing through her ship's chambers, a sound so powerful that even her commanders paused to listen. "Pathetic creatures," she said, her tone dripping with amusement. "They believe they can oppose me. Their weapons are insignificant and their minds narrow. I will watch them flounder before I take what is mine." Her words were not just arrogance, they were a declaration of certainty. The humans, however, were far from as unprepared as the queen believed. Military analysts quickly realized that although their weapons were primitive compared to alien technology, strategy and knowledge of the terrain could be advantages. Soldiers trained in difficult conditions, teams who had survived wars and conflicts on Earth, began to organize. Local militias, volunteers, and even ordinary citizens contributed, offering support wherever they could. The Queen, however, dismissed these efforts. From her observation deck, the humans' frantic preparations looked chaotic and futile. She watched them like an entomologist observing insects, convinced that no amount of courage or cleverness could alter the inevitable outcome. She was particularly amused by the humans' attempts at communication. Satellites, radio channels, and even attempts to send messages to her fleet were met with swift and cold indifference. The Queen viewed every gesture as a joke, proof that humans were naive. Her laughter rang out across her command deck. "Do they think they can negotiate with a being like me? They are entertaining at least." Her commanders tried to caution her, pointing out that human unpredictability had caused problems in past encounters with other civilizations. But she waved them off. Experience, she believed, was irrelevant here. She had never met a species as fragile and laughable as humans. Despite her confidence, not all humans were paralyzed by fear. In cities across the world, ordinary people did extraordinary things. Firefighters, police officers, doctors, and volunteers formed local defense units. They helped evacuate civilians, organized shelters, and even constructed improvised barriers. News outlets broadcast stories of courage and quick thinking, of people helping strangers and working as teams. For the Queen, these reports were amusing at first. She could not understand why such fragile beings would risk their lives for others when survival seemed impossible. Yet deep down, there was something vaguely intriguing about their determination, a faint flicker of potential that she could not immediately identify. The first public demonstration of human resistance came when small fighter jets attempted to intercept the alien fleet. Though outmatched technologically, the pilots displayed remarkable coordination. They dodged and weaved through the enormous ships, launching their missiles with precision. The alien queen observed these maneuvers with a mixture of curiosity and mild irritation. She swiveled her massive head, following each jet as if tracking a tiny insect moving against the wind. "Foolish," she muttered. "Do they really believe they can scratch me?" But as the missiles bounced harmlessly off her shields, she realized something. Humans were unpredictable. Their strength was not in raw power, but in courage, adaptability, and teamwork. Still, she reminded herself that this was merely an annoyance, nothing more. In the days that followed, human activity intensified. Military bases began coordinating globally, sharing information and resources. Engineers devised innovative ways to adapt existing technology to counter the alien threat. Civilians contributed knowledge and labor, from constructing radar stations to coding complex software for tracking alien movements. Each step was small, each innovation modest in the Queen's eyes, but collectively they began to form a resistance that was harder to ignore. From her fleet, the Queen continued her mockery. She broadcast messages directly to human leaders, taunting their attempts at preparation. "Do you think your little machines can harm me?" she said, her voice carrying across communication networks. "Do you imagine that your bravery can shield you from what is inevitable?" Humans listened, some with fear, others with defiance. Soldiers and civilians alike felt the sting of her arrogance, but instead of giving in, many became more determined. Her mockery, intended to demoralize, had an unexpected effect. It united humans in a way that even she had not anticipated. Yet the Queen remained unshaken. She spent hours observing, learning nothing but confirming her superiority. Every human effort was a momentary distraction, quickly forgotten as she turned her attention to more significant matters: fleet positioning, battle simulations, and strategic planning. She was meticulous, calculating every possibility with precision. She believed victory was assured, and nothing human could change that. Even as the Queen watched, there were glimpses of the human spirit that gave her pause. Children drew pictures of flying ships, imagining they could defend the Earth. Scientists worked tirelessly to develop new defensive technologies. Ordinary citizens risked their lives to help others. These acts were small and scattered, easy to dismiss, but they carried a sense of determination that was unfamiliar to the Queen. For the first time, a question formed in her mind. Could there be something in humans that even her experience could not fully anticipate? She quickly pushed the thought aside, unwilling to consider that such fragile beings might contain a hidden strength. By the end of the first week, the Queen had established a clear view of humanity's defenses. She noted the leaders, the strongest military units, and the areas with the highest concentrations of people. From her vantage point, humans seemed like ants, moving purposefully but ultimately insignificant. Still, she continued to watch, intrigued by the subtle ways humans adapted to each new challenge. Their improvisation, creativity, and resilience were unexpected, yet she remained convinced that her superior technology and strategy would prevail. The alien Queen's fleet moved closer to the Earth's surface, ready for the first major engagement. From her command chair, she observed her forces aligning with perfect precision. Ships hovered in formation, energy weapons charging and shields primed. Her generals awaited orders, tense but obedient. The Queen looked down at the humans below, the creatures she had spent so long dismissing, and smiled. "Watch closely," she whispered. "Soon all will see the futility of their courage. Soon they will understand that nothing can stop me." Two worlds, one of unimaginable power and another of fragile determination, were about to collide. The alien Queen mocked humanity openly, certain of her victory. But as she watched the first sparks of resistance, a faint awareness began to stir, something she could not yet name. And so the quiet tension before the storm grew, as humans braced for the battle that would test their courage, their unity, and their very survival. The alien Queen's laughter echoed across her fleet once more, a sound that seemed almost alive, weaving through the corridors and chambers of her massive ships. From her vantage point, the humans looked like tiny insects scrambling for safety. She tilted her head, observing their efforts to organize. Soldiers ran between makeshift command centers, vehicles scuttled along roads, and civilians hurried to shelters and aid stations. It was all so chaotic, so disordered, and yet she could not help but watch. There was a strange rhythm in their chaos, a stubborn determination that made her pause for just a moment. But she shook her head, reminding herself that it was nothing more than the frantic motion of fragile creatures facing an impossible threat. Her mockery was deliberate. She wanted them to feel fear, to falter before she even set foot on the battlefield. Through the communication network she had tapped, her voice carried over radio, television, and even online streams. She spoke with a smooth, icy calm, her words carefully chosen to wound and intimidate. "Look at yourselves," she said, her tone dripping with amusement. "So small, so weak, and yet so desperate. Do you truly believe that your courage can save you? They are unpredictable. Do you think Earth is any different?" Scientists experimented with energy fields and electronic countermeasures, hoping to find even the smallest advantage. Civilians volunteered tirelessly, transporting supplies, organizing shelters, providing medical assistance. The Queen could see it all, and she found it fascinating, but only as a curiosity, a brief entertainment before the inevitable victory she expected. Still, her attention kept returning to certain humans. Small groups stood out, not because they were extraordinary in appearance, but because they moved with purpose and calm under pressure. She watched as a team of soldiers mapped out defensive positions in a forest near a human settlement. Each member seemed to anticipate the next move of their teammates without speaking. It was efficient, almost elegant. The Queen tilted her head, studying them. "They think coordination can save them," she murmured. "It is cute if useless." Families fled cities, unsure where to go, and military units hesitated, doubting whether their weapons could ever harm the alien fleet. The Queen had expected this. She believed that fear would weaken them, that hesitation would make them easy targets. But humans, resilient as they were, began to adapt. Panic gave way to determination. Fear became motivation. What she had intended as ridicule began to strengthen their resolve. She watched a human commander coordinating troops over a communication network. The commander, a woman in her late 30s with a steady voice and sharp eyes, gave clear orders. "Move to the eastern ridge," she instructed. "Set up defensive positions, keep civilians safe. Do not engage unless necessary." Her calm under pressure contrasted sharply with the chaos around her. The Queen observed with a mix of disdain and curiosity. "She believes she can command them to victory," she said, almost to herself. "Foolish, courage cannot replace power." Small acts of defiance, children hiding supplies for soldiers, engineers risking their lives to maintain communication lines, citizens standing firm against panic, were impossible to ignore. They did not possess the strength to match her fleet, but they had something else: determination, creativity, and an unbreakable will to protect their home. She frowned. It was a quality she had seen before, but rarely in a species so physically fragile. Her mockery intensified during simulated skirmishes. The Queen had access to live drone feeds from human training grounds and defense exercises. She watched soldiers practice evasive maneuvers, firing simulated rounds at drones resembling alien ships. She laughed as she saw mistakes and missteps, pointing them out to her commanders. "Pathetic," she said. "They cannot even hit a machine built for children, and yet they think they can fight me." Her words were sharp, but within them lay a faint recognition. They were trying, even if it was futile. Humans, for their part, began to recognize patterns in the Queen's behavior. Analysts noticed that she often observed specific units more closely than others. Teams were reassigned to spread out her attention, confusing her sensors and cameras. Strategies evolved quickly based on the subtle behaviors she displayed. Though she did not realize it, the Queen's mockery was shaping human tactics. Every insult, every taunt became fuel for their ingenuity. She laughed at them, yet they learned from her, adapting in ways that made her pause ever so briefly. In one particularly tense moment, a small human squad attempted to approach one of her observation points using terrain as cover. The Queen's eyes, sharp and unrelenting, followed their every move. "They move like insects, weaving through grass and rubble," she said. "They believe hiding can protect them. How amusing." Yet the squad reached their objective without being detected, an achievement that even her commanders had doubted. For a moment, the Queen's amusement faltered. She frowned, a subtle sign of her first real recognition. These humans were clever. Civilians played a role too. Stories of bravery spread quickly. People rescuing neighbors during evacuations, volunteers running medical aid stations, children finding ways to help despite fear. News networks broadcast their actions, and social media amplified every story. Humans began to see each other not as isolated individuals, but as part of a larger, interconnected effort. Even as the Queen mocked their physical weakness, she could not fully dismiss the spirit that united them. She decided to escalate her psychological pressure. Using holographic projections visible across major cities, she displayed her fleet in intimidating formations, demonstrating the scale of her power. Her voice boomed from speakers in the streets and on broadcast networks. "See the truth of your situation," she declared. "Your weapons are toys, your courage is a joke. Surrender and your suffering will be brief." Soldiers trained for unconventional tactics. Even the youngest volunteers found ways to contribute. Where the Queen sought to sow fear, she instead discovered resilience. Her mockery became a catalyst, provoking not submission but unity. Amid all this, she identified a few key figures, humans who seemed unusually confident and capable. One was a young sergeant, no older than 25, whose calm demeanor in reports and simulations caught her attention. Another was a scientist who coordinated energy defenses with precision. And yet another was a civilian who organized evacuation efforts with an almost military efficiency. To the Queen, these individuals were anomalies, small sparks in a world she believed would burn easily. She focused on them, observing their every move, confident she could break their spirit before it became a real threat. Her mockery continued, more pointed now, aimed directly at these individuals. She called out their weaknesses, broadcast their mistakes, and attempted to intimidate them publicly. "You cannot protect them," she said. "You cannot outsmart me. Even your cleverness is shallow. Resistance is meaningless." Her laughter echoed through her fleet, but now it was accompanied by a strange unease, a subtle recognition that humans were not as simple as she had assumed. The days leading up to the first engagement were filled with this tense back and forth. Humans worked tirelessly, motivated both by fear and by pride. The Queen observed, mocking and scornful, yet increasingly attentive. She cataloged their behaviors, analyzed their tactics, and yet could not fully anticipate their creativity. For the first time, she wondered, not openly, not in admission, but quietly, if perhaps there was more to these humans than met the eye. By the end of this period, a pattern had emerged. Humans were weak individually, but strong collectively. They were unpredictable in ways her experience had rarely accounted for. And though she continued to mock them, a small seed of curiosity had been planted. A faint sense that perhaps one or two of these humans might show a courage she had not yet witnessed. The alien Queen's fleet hovered above Earth, readying for the first encounter. Her eyes swept across the planet, noting every city, every military installation, every hidden camp. She laughed, her mockery still sharp, but her attention now more focused. Humans were amusing, entertaining, and yet, just faintly, capable of surprising her. The first battle was coming, and she believed it would be simple. But as she studied the humans below, she could not completely dismiss the possibility that the unpredictable spark she saw might grow into something worth watching more closely. The day of the first major battle dawned with a pale orange sky, the sun struggling to break through the early morning haze. On Earth, the tension was palpable. Soldiers checked their equipment one last time, civilians huddled in shelters, and military commanders whispered final instructions into radios. No one could predict exactly what would happen, yet everyone felt the weight of history pressing down on them. This was the moment they had been preparing for, the first true test against a foe that had mocked them from above. Above the planet, the alien Queen's fleet moved with terrifying precision. Her ships glided silently through the sky, enormous shadows casting darkness over the land below. She looked down at the humans, her eyes narrowing. From her observation deck, the humans appeared even smaller and weaker than before. Yet there was a rhythm to their movements, a strange coordination that caught her attention. She frowned. "They are preparing for something," she said, her voice quiet but sharp. "Still, it is meaningless. No preparation can match my power." Using every resource available, they had chosen a narrow canyon as the site of their first stand. The canyon's rocky walls provided natural cover, hiding soldiers and vehicles from the Queen's sensors. Engineers had placed barricades and traps, designed to slow the advance of alien forces. Communication lines were secure, with multiple redundancies in place. Every decision was calculated, every action carefully planned. Even without the sophisticated technology of the aliens, humans had learned to make the terrain work for them. Among the soldiers was a young sergeant named Elias. He had no formal accolades and was only recently promoted, but he carried himself with a quiet confidence that others noticed immediately. His eyes scanned the canyon, noting every ridge, boulder, and shadow. He gave calm, precise instructions to his squad, coordinating movements like a conductor guiding an orchestra. Even in the midst of fear and uncertainty, he remained steady, an anchor for the people around him. The Queen's sensors picked up his movements, and though she dismissed them at first, there was something about the way he commanded attention that made her watch longer than usual. The battle began as a sudden tremor shook the canyon. Alien ships descended rapidly, energy weapons blazing. The first waves of attackers swept over the canyon walls, easily destroying the initial defenses. The Queen observed with amusement, certain that the humans would crumble under the sheer force of her fleet. She leaned forward, her face alight with confidence. "See how fragile they are," she said. "Even their barricades cannot withstand a single strike. This will be over quickly." He signaled his squad to hold their positions, carefully directing the fire of small arms and improvised weapons. While their attacks barely damaged the alien ships, they succeeded in delaying their advance. Explosions shook the canyon, smoke rose in thick clouds, and the air was filled with the sound of battle. Each human action seemed small, but collectively they slowed the Queen's forces, forcing the aliens to adjust tactics. As the battle continued, Elias spotted a group of injured civilians trapped behind a fallen boulder. Without hesitation, he led a small team to rescue them. Dodging blasts and leaping over obstacles, he moved with precision and courage. His squad followed closely, inspired by his example. Every human act of bravery seemed to defy the Queen's expectations. She leaned back in her observation chair, her sharp eyes narrowing. "They are so fragile," she murmured. "And yet, there is something in them I did not anticipate." Humans used the terrain cleverly, leading alien forces into traps, cutting off their advance in narrow passages, and using explosives to damage smaller ships attempting to land. It was chaotic, unpredictable, and exhausting, yet the humans adapted with every attack. Elias moved through the chaos with calm determination, helping injured comrades, redirecting fire, and encouraging those around him. His bravery and leadership became a focal point for the entire battle. The Queen's mockery faltered slightly. She had expected chaos and panic, but what she saw was far more organized. Humans moved with purpose, adapting in ways she had not calculated. Each time an alien ship was slowed or damaged, her frown deepened. "They are resilient," she admitted quietly, though her tone was almost a whisper, as if acknowledging it aloud would weaken her authority. Her fleet continued to attack, but the humans' determination had begun to alter the course of the battle. At one point, a massive alien walker descended into the canyon, its energy shields glowing brightly. The humans had no direct way to stop it. Elias studied the machine, noting its weak points and patterns. He quickly formulated a plan. Using a combination of explosives, improvised barricades, and precise timing, he led his squad in a daring maneuver that forced the walker to collapse against the canyon wall. The Queen's eyes widened. "Impossible," she whispered. "They are clever." The canyon, which had seemed like a trap, became a stage where human ingenuity and determination began to shine. The Queen, for the first time, felt a shift in her perception. The humans were not just weak, fragile creatures. Individually, they might have been insignificant, but together they were adaptive, strategic, and brave. She studied Elias closely, her cold amusement slowly turning into curiosity. "This one," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "He fights differently. There is something in him." Yet Elias and his squad moved with unwavering focus, rescuing trapped comrades, redirecting fire, and improvising strategies on the fly. Every small victory became a spark of hope, and each act of bravery, no matter how minor, contributed to slowing the alien advance. As the battle reached its peak, the Queen decided to intervene directly. She descended in her personal ship, her presence massive and terrifying. Energy shields flared, weapons charged, and her eyes scanned the battlefield. She had expected humans to scatter in panic. She had expected fear to paralyze them. Instead, she saw organized resistance, coordinated attacks, and the singular figure of Elias moving confidently among the chaos. For the first time, the Queen felt a flicker of uncertainty. She had underestimated the human spirit, their ability to adapt, and the courage of one warrior who refused to give in. Her mockery had not broken them, it had only strengthened their resolve. She leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Elias, realizing that this was more than a battle. It was a test of willpower, ingenuity, and determination. Elias led his squad in a final maneuver to hold a critical pass in the canyon. Using the last of their ammunition, they created a trap that forced a wave of alien forces into a narrow choke point. Explosions rocked the canyon, fire and smoke engulfed the battlefield, and yet the humans stood firm. Their courage, determination, and quick thinking had bought them time and inflicted real damage. The Queen's expression changed. Her amusement was gone, replaced by focused attention. For the first time, she saw humans not as weak creatures to be mocked, but as unpredictable adversaries capable of remarkable feats. She noted Elias in particular, recognizing his bravery, leadership, and the inspiration he had sparked in others. It was a moment of acknowledgement, though she would never admit it openly. As the first battle drew to a close, the queen withdrew her forces temporarily. She had not been defeated, but she had been challenged in ways she had never expected. The humans had proven that courage, strategy, and unity could slow even the mightiest of enemies. And at the center of this resistance stood one young sergeant, whose actions had begun to turn the tide, not through sheer strength, but through determination, intelligence, and an unyielding spirit. The canyon fell silent as smoke and dust settled. Soldiers tended to the wounded, civilians emerged from hiding, and the surviving humans looked at one another with a sense of pride. They had faced an overwhelmingly powerful enemy and survived, largely because of the courage of one man and the collective will of everyone around him. Above them, the queen remained in her ship, her expression unreadable. She had mocked humanity without mercy, confident in her superiority. Yet now she could not dismiss what she had seen. Humans were weak, yes, but they were clever, adaptable, and most importantly, fearless when protecting what they loved. She would have to reconsider her strategy. And so the first battle ended, not with total victory for the queen, but with a profound lesson. The humans, though fragile, had strength where it mattered most, in courage, unity, and determination. And Elias, the young sergeant who had led with quiet confidence, had become a symbol of that strength, a spark that would grow in the battles yet to come. After the first battle, the canyon lay in a heavy silence. Smoke drifted lazily between jagged rocks, and the ground was scarred from explosions. Fires still smoldered where alien energy weapons had scorched the earth. Humans moved cautiously among the ruins, tending to the wounded, rescuing the trapped, and gathering what supplies remained. Even in the aftermath of devastation, a quiet sense of triumph lingered. They had survived the attack, slowed the alien advance, and proven, at least to themselves, that they could fight against impossible odds. Elias walked among the survivors, checking each soldier and civilian with careful eyes. He was exhausted, his uniform torn and scorched, but his movements were steady and deliberate. Every action he took inspired those around him. His calm presence gave reassurance to people who had just witnessed the near impossibility of survival. Others began to see him not just as a sergeant, but as a leader who had shown courage when it was most needed. Word spread quickly among the ranks that Elias had been the one to hold the critical pass, to coordinate defenses, and to lead the daring maneuvers that had bought time for everyone else. Far above, the alien queen observed the aftermath with a mixture of frustration and fascination. Her fleet remained in orbit, the massive ship still casting shadows over the planet below. At first, she had been sure that humans were fragile and predictable, easy to intimidate and control. Yet now, after witnessing Elias and his squad hold their ground against overwhelming power, a quiet doubt began to stir. She frowned, something almost unfamiliar in her expression. "They survived," she asked, her voice low and restrained. "Even after everything I have done, they survive." "It is their will. That one human, the young sergeant, he fights differently. He inspires others. He makes them more than they are." Survivors told stories of courage, how one soldier had carried an injured teammate to safety, how a civilian had rescued children from falling debris, how Elias had coordinated attacks while dodging enemy fire. The stories spread quickly through radio networks and word of mouth, fueling determination. Humans were learning that fear could be used as fuel rather than as a weapon against them. Elias did not pause to celebrate. He moved from one group to another, checking on supplies, reorganizing soldiers, and planning their next steps. Even as exhaustion threatened to take him down, he maintained focus. Every decision he made was deliberate and precise. He encouraged small groups to form strategies, showing them how to use terrain to their advantage, how to move quietly, and how to conserve resources. His actions reminded everyone that courage alone was not enough. Strategy, intelligence, and teamwork were equally important. The alien queen's focus on Elias intensified. She studied his movements, observing how his presence inspired others, how his decisions influenced the flow of battle, and how his courage seemed to ripple outward, strengthening every human near him. She had expected humans to scatter in fear, to crumble under pressure, and to surrender quickly. Instead, she saw a pattern, individual bravery amplified by teamwork and strategy, creating a force that was small but effective. Her mockery, once sharp and confident, began to falter. She had expected to dominate effortlessly, but the humans had survived and adapted in ways she had not predicted. She tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "Perhaps I have underestimated them," she said quietly. "Perhaps one human can be more than a threat." Ilias led a group through a narrow passage, using smoke and debris for cover to position themselves strategically. They were not attacking blindly. Every move was carefully planned, every action meant to maximize effect while minimizing risk. Suddenly, a squad of alien scouts appeared, moving quickly through the canyon. Their energy shields glowed brightly, and their weapons hummed with lethal energy. Humans braced for the worst. Ilias' heart raced, but he did not hesitate. He quickly directed his squad, setting traps and positioning his soldiers along high ground. They used the terrain expertly, forcing the scouts into narrow paths where their shields were less effective. When the humans attacked, the aliens were caught off guard. Explosions rocked the canyon as barricades fell and traps were triggered. The queen watched every moment, her fascination growing. "He fights differently," she whispered, almost to herself. "He does not act out of fear. He does not retreat. He inspires others to fight, to think, to survive. Perhaps he is the one." Every decision was precise, and every risk calculated. The humans had survived their first major attack, and now they were turning defense into offense. The turning point came when Ilias and a small group took a bold maneuver to flank the alien scouts. Using smoke, debris, and the canyon walls for cover, they approached from a direction the aliens had not anticipated. With precision timing, they detonated explosives that disabled several scouts and created a barrier that cut off the remaining forces. The humans had achieved a rare victory, one that shifted momentum in their favor. The queen's expression changed. She had mocked humans for their weakness, ridiculed their attempts at organization, and believed that fear would keep them in line. Yet here they were, small, fragile, and seemingly insignificant, turning the tide against her forces. She leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Ilias. "This one, he fights with purpose, not panic. He commands others without fear. He inspires. Perhaps he is more than I imagined." They were unpredictable, adaptive, and capable of remarkable courage. Ilias was not merely a soldier. He was a symbol of human strength, intelligence, and determination. The queen realized that breaking him could be key to dominating the humans, but it also meant acknowledging, even privately, that they were capable of feats she had not expected. On the ground, humans were exhausted but elated. They had faced near-certain defeat and emerged stronger, more coordinated, and more confident. Ilias continued to move among them, ensuring everyone was accounted for, giving orders to prepare for the next wave, and maintaining a calm that kept panic at bay. His courage was contagious, spreading through the ranks and lifting the morale of even the most frightened civilians. The queen withdrew her fleet slightly to regroup, though she remained in close observation. She analyzed every movement, every tactic, and every human action with an intensity she had reserved only for civilizations that had posed a true challenge. Her mockery was no longer as sharp. Instead, there was a growing sense of respect, cautious and restrained. Humans had survived, adapted, and even outsmarted her forces in ways she had not predicted. And at the center of this resilience was one human warrior, the young sergeant named Ilias. As night fell over the canyon, humans worked to fortify their positions, treating the wounded, repairing defenses, and preparing for whatever the queen would send next. They were tired, but their determination had grown. They had faced fear, chaos, and overwhelming odds, and had proven that courage, strategy, and teamwork could create a force greater than the sum of its parts. The alien queen observed silently, her mind analyzing the implications. She had come expecting an easy conquest, but the humans had defied her expectations. She could no longer dismiss them as weak, insignificant creatures. They were clever, adaptive, and most importantly, brave in ways that mattered most. And one human, Ilias, had become the embodiment of that courage, a warrior who had not only survived but inspired everyone around him. By the end of the day, the queen realized that the first battle had changed everything. Humans were no longer simply targets of mockery. They were opponents to be studied, understood, and respected. Ilias had shown her that courage, intelligence, and determination could make even the smallest human a force to be reckoned with. And so, the first turning point in the war was complete. The humans had not won the battle outright, but they had achieved something more important. They had proven that they could fight, adapt, and survive against an enemy that had believed them powerless. And the alien queen, who had mocked them without mercy, was beginning to see that perhaps, just perhaps, humans were capable of more than she had ever imagined. The days following the turning point were tense, filled with preparation and anticipation. Humans worked tirelessly, repairing equipment, tending to the wounded, and strengthening their defenses. Soldiers, volunteers, and civilians all moved with a sense of purpose that reflected the courage they had displayed in the canyon. Each small victory, every act of bravery had fueled their determination. They had survived the impossible, and now they were ready to continue the fight. Elias continued to lead with calm authority. His face was smeared with dirt and sweat, his uniform torn, but he moved with unshakable focus. Every decision he made was precise, from organizing defensive positions to instructing civilians on safety measures. He encouraged his squad to think carefully, to work together, and to act boldly when the moment required it. His quiet confidence inspired everyone around him, creating a sense of calm determination in the midst of chaos. From her fleet above, the alien queen observed with an intensity she had never allowed herself before. She had mocked humans relentlessly at first, certain of her supremacy, but now she watched them in a new light. Their courage, intelligence, and unity had not only slowed her forces, but had shown her that one human, Elias, could influence an entire population. She leaned forward, her silver eyes following his movements, and a strange thought crossed her mind. Perhaps she had underestimated the human spirit entirely. The Queen's forces moved carefully this time, aware that humans had learned from their first engagement. Her ships advanced with caution, scanning for traps, obstacles, and ambushes. The humans had grown stronger, not because they had better weapons, but because they had learned to think creatively, adapt quickly, and act with purpose. Elias directed small squads to take strategic positions, coordinating attacks and defenses with precision. Every move was deliberate, calculated to maximize impact while minimizing risk. The first encounter of this phase took place at a narrow river valley. The terrain was tricky, with steep cliffs on both sides and fast-moving water below. Human scouts had spotted alien patrols moving in formations, attempting to flank their positions. Elias quickly organized a response. He placed barricades along likely paths, assigned sharpshooters to high vantage points, and set up small traps to disrupt enemy movements. Soldiers and volunteers moved with determination, working together as if they were a single organism. The aliens advanced cautiously, unaware that their every step was being anticipated. They were powerful, technologically superior, and relentless, but humans were clever. They used the terrain to their advantage, striking quickly and then disappearing into cover. Each engagement was a test of endurance, strategy, and courage. The Queen observed closely, her usual amusement replaced by focused attention. Every time Elias made a move that challenged her expectations, she leaned forward, studying him carefully. "He fights not for fear, not for reward, but because he will not allow defeat," she whispered. Elias noticed patterns in the alien attacks and used them to his advantage. He sent small teams to distract enemy units while other squads struck at weak points. Civilians assisted by carrying supplies, tending to the wounded, and relaying messages. Each person contributed to the battle in ways that suited their skills, and Elias' leadership ensured that every effort counted. It was coordination, courage, and ingenuity combined that allowed humans to hold their positions and even push the aliens back in certain areas. The Queen's curiosity grew with every maneuver. She had believed humans would break under pressure, yet here they were, standing tall, adapting, and even achieving victories against overwhelming odds. Elias' leadership was the focal point, but it was the collective determination of humans that surprised her most. She realized that their strength was not in power or weapons, but in resilience, strategy, and the will to protect each other. At one critical moment, an alien strike team attempted to breach a human barricade. The Queen expected immediate panic and retreat. Instead, Elias directed a counterattack. He led a small squad along a hidden path, flanking the enemy and launching a surprise assault. The alien soldiers were forced to retreat, their formation broken, their energy weapons disrupted by strategically placed traps and coordinated fire. The humans had achieved something remarkable. They had taken the fight to the enemy, turning a defensive position into an opportunity for offense. This act did not go unnoticed. The Queen leaned closer, her silver eyes narrowing. Elias was not just surviving, he was inspiring others, creating confidence and courage wherever he went. She had mocked humans for their weakness, but now she saw that even the smallest among them could shape the course of battle. It was a lesson she had never anticipated. Elias and his squad continued to lead their teams through the valley, moving with a rhythm that kept their enemies off balance. Civilians assisted fearlessly, carrying supplies, clearing debris, and helping the injured. Soldiers followed Elias' example, maintaining calm under pressure and adapting to every unexpected challenge. The queen observed silently, recognizing that she could not predict every move, and that human creativity and courage made them unpredictable adversaries. The turning point came when Elias led a decisive maneuver to protect a critical bridge used for evacuation. Alien forces attempted to destroy it, which would have trapped civilians and soldiers alike. Elias coordinated a small group to reinforce the structure and repel attackers. He moved through fire and chaos, rescuing wounded soldiers and civilians while directing counterattacks. Every move was precise, and his courage inspired everyone around him to act with determination. The queen watched intently, her mind analyzing every action. Elias' bravery was extraordinary, but it was his ability to inspire others that fascinated her most. Humans were fragile individually, but their unity and determination amplified their strength. She realized that mocking them, as she had done before, was no longer appropriate. They had earned something far greater: respect. As the battle continued, humans began to gain the upper hand. Small squads used guerrilla tactics to disrupt alien formations, traps slowed advanced vehicles, and sharpshooters targeted weak points with precision. The Queen's fleet was powerful, but the humans' courage, adaptability, and coordination made it difficult to achieve complete domination. Every victory, every clever maneuver reminded her that she had underestimated them. By the end of the engagement, humans had secured key positions, protected civilians, and inflicted meaningful damage on the alien forces. Elias stood at the center of the valley, exhausted but composed, surrounded by soldiers and volunteers who had survived because of his leadership. There were injuries, there was loss, but there was also triumph, a hard-earned recognition that courage and unity could overcome even the most terrifying opponent. The alien queen's fleet withdrew slightly, retreating to regroup. She sat silently in her command deck, her gaze fixed on the humans below. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel something she had never expected: admiration. She had mocked them, doubted them, and expected them to crumble. Yet here they were, adaptable, brave, and capable of inspiring one another. And at the heart of it all was one human, Elias, whose courage and leadership had changed the course of the battle. The queen finally spoke, her voice softer than before, almost thoughtful. "They are not weak," she said quietly. "They are unpredictable. They are clever, and they fight with a courage I have rarely seen. That one human, he is extraordinary. Perhaps I have underestimated them all." Civilians celebrated quietly, soldiers saluted Elias, and survivors shared stories of bravery that would be told for generations. The canyon, once a scene of devastation, now held a sense of pride, hope, and resilience. Elias did not seek recognition. He moved among his squad, ensuring everyone was safe, encouraging recovery, and planning for the challenges ahead. Yet his actions had left an indelible mark on everyone around him. He had not just survived, he had inspired. He had become a symbol of courage and leadership that would resonate long after the battle ended. The queen observed from above, her expression one of contemplation. She had come expecting an easy conquest, intending to mock and dominate humans. But in the face of their courage and determination, she had learned a new lesson. Strength is not measured solely by power, but by will, intelligence, and the ability to inspire others. Humans had earned her respect, not as enemies she could destroy, but as beings capable of remarkable courage. As the sun set over the valley, casting long shadows over the rugged terrain, the humans gathered together. They were tired, wounded, and weary, but their spirits were unbroken. They had faced overwhelming power, survived, and achieved something extraordinary, and the alien queen, once their mocking observer, had witnessed it all. She now understood that courage, determination, and unity could make even the smallest human a force to be reckoned with. In that moment, the story of humans and the alien queen reached a quiet but powerful conclusion. The humans had not simply survived, they had shown the strength of the human spirit. Elias had not only led them in battle, but had become a symbol of courage and inspiration. And the alien queen, who had once mocked them without mercy, now looked upon them with respect, forever changed by the bravery she had witnessed. The war was far from over, but one truth had been established: humans were no longer to be underestimated. Their courage, ingenuity, and unity had earned them a place in the galaxy, not as weak creatures, but as beings capable of inspiring even the most powerful adversaries. And so, the battle ended not with total victory, but with earned respect, a lesson in courage and the promise that humans, no matter how fragile they appeared, could rise to greatness when faced with the impossible.